The lady from the church asked me to pray for her husband's soul. I said, "Of course, when did he die?" And she answered, "Tomorrow." No child should die alone. That's why I decided to let my son invite some friends over. Someone started having a coughing fit at my workplace. The problem is that I work alone in a morgue. Never knock on your door from the inside at dawn. The devil can knock on the outside. These macabre stories and others that can't be told on the channel, you'll see in the Cursed ebook. The link is in the comments. Buy it now. In the quaint town of Ashton, there was a toy shop unlike any other. Its wooden sign, painted and faded red, bore the name David Herrick's Toy Emporium. It had been there for decades, yet few people ever ventured inside. A mysterious aura clung to the shop, whispered about in hushed tones among the townsfolk. The shop's facade was old and worn, its once bright colors now dulled by the relentless passage of time. Its windows were dusty and obscured, making it difficult to see the interior. A sense of foreboding seemed to emanate from the building, casting an unsettling shadow over anyone who approached. Rumors about the shop spread like wildfire after a series of strange incidents. People spoke of toys that moved on their own, and of eerie laughter echoing from within the shop's walls. Some claimed that once you entered, you could never leave, but the most unsettling of all was the cryptic sign placed by the entrance. Read the rules before entering this toy shop. The sign itself was peculiar. It was hand-painted with uneven letters, and looked like it had been put up in a hurry. The message was clear, though it instructed potential visitors to carefully read the rules before stepping inside. Many dismissed it as a gimmick, but a few heeded the warning, though their curiosity often got the better of them. One rainy evening, a young woman named Emily, driven by a mix of curiosity and skepticism, decided to investigate the shop. She had heard the rumors, but thought them nothing more than local legends. As she approached, the door creaked open as if inviting her in. Inside, the shop was dimly lit. Rows upon rows of toys filled the shelves, but they were not like any toys Emily had seen before. Antique dolls with glassy eyes, wooden soldiers with chipped paint, and stuffed animals with forlorn expressions all seemed to watch her as she moved. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. Emily's footsteps echoed in the silence, her heart racing as she scanned the strange array of items. She noticed that the rules were posted on a small, ornate plaque by the register, just as the sign had indicated. She approached the plaque, her curiosity piqued. The rules were written in a neat, flowing script, almost elegant in its presentation. They were as follows. Rule 1. Do not touch the toys. Rule 2. Do not speak to the toys. Rule 3. Do not make eye contact with the toys. Emily chuckled nervously. The rules seemed absurd to her, almost comical. She wondered who would take such warnings seriously, but something about the atmosphere made her hesitant. She decided to heed the rules, though she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As she wandered deeper into the shop, she began to notice odd things. The toes seemed to shift ever so slightly when she wasn't looking directly at them. At first, She thought it was just her imagination, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger with every passing moment. Then she heard it, a faint whispering. It was barely audible, but it was there. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to locate the source. The whispers seemed to come from all directions, growing louder and more insistent the longer she stayed. She quickly realized that she was alone in the shop. The store was eerily silent except for the whispers that now seemed to surround her. She glanced nervously at the toys, half expecting them to spring to life at any moment, but they remained motionless, their eyes following her every move. Emily's unease grew into outright fear. The whispers became more coherent, forming fragmented sentences that she could barely make out. Words like leave, help, and trap floated through the air, each one sending shivers down her spine. She decided it was time to leave. As she turned towards the door, she found it slightly ajar, just as she had left it. But as she reached for the handle, the door slammed shut with a resounding bang. The sound was deafening, and Emily's scream was swallowed by the oppressive silence. Panic surged through her. She tried the door again, but it wouldn't budge. Desperate, she turned back to the shop, her eyes wide with terror. The toes, which had once seemed so still, now appeared to be shifting, their expressions darkening as if they were preparing for something. The whispers grew louder, coalescing into a chorus of pleading voices. Emily could no longer make out individual words, but the urgency was clear. The toes seemed to move closer, their eyes now following her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. In a frenzy, Emily dashed through the shop, searching for another way out. She stumbled over toys that seemed to move just enough to trip her up. Her breaths came in ragged gasps as she tried every door and window, but all were sealed tight. Her mind raced, trying to remember the rules she had read. "Do not touch the toys," she cursed under her breath as she had brushed against several toys in her panic. Had she broken the rules? And was that why she was trapped? The shop's lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The whispers turned into a cacophony of angry voices, their frustration palpable. Emily's fear was now mixed with a sense of despair. She could no longer distinguish between reality and nightmare. As the shadows danced around her, Emily saw a figure emerge from the darkness. It was an old man, his face wrinkled and his eyes cold and lifeless. He was dressed in old-fashioned clothing, and his presence seemed to command the shadows to retreat. The man spoke in a voice that was both soothing and menacing. "Welcome to David Herrick's Toy Emporium. You've broken the rules, and now you must pay the price." His tone was calm, but there was an underlying threat in his words. Emily tried to plead with him, but her words were drowned out by the rising intensity of the whispers. The old man's gaze was unrelenting, and she could feel an invisible force pushing her back. Her attempts to reason with him were met with silence. The toes began to move in unison, their once passive expressions now twisted into grotesque mockeries of glee. They seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Emily could only watch in horror as they surrounded her. Despair enveloped her as she realized the gravity of her situation. The rules were not mere suggestions, they were warnings. She had ignored them, and now she was trapped in a nightmare of her own making. The toes seemed to sense her defeat and grew more aggressive. The old man's figure began to blur and shift, his form becoming indistinct. It was as if he was part of the shadows themselves. His voice echoed through the shop, a final, chilling statement. You will join the others. The toys always need new friends. As the toys closed in, Emily felt a strange sensation, one of being pulled into the very walls of the shop. It was as if the building itself was consuming her, merging her into its cursed existence. Her screams were muffled as she was absorbed into the darkness. Outside, the shop appeared as it always had, old and unassuming. No one would have known the horror that lurked within. The sign still hung by the door, the rules unchanged. And though the shop was empty, an unsettling feeling lingered in the air. The townsfolk continued to speak of the shop in hushed tones, telling the tale of the girl who had vanished without a trace. Some said her spirit haunted the shop, her presence felt by those who dared to ignore the rules. The whispers of her fate became part of the local legend. To this day, the shop stands as a grim reminder of the dangers of curiosity. The rules remain posted for any who might venture inside, a final warning to those who would challenge the mysteries of David Herrick's Toy Emporium. And so the shop waits. The toes remain ever watchful, their eyes eternally fixed on the empty space where Emily once stood. For those who read the rules but choose to ignore them, the shop's dark promise endures, that no one truly escapes the clutches of David Herrick's Toy Emporium. Until next time, thank you.